Okay, and as I announced earlier, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligent image generation tonight. Uh, and I will share my own screen on that. So this will sort of be our end of year update. Last time was actually December of 2023. So it's been just a tad bit longer than a year. One thing about artificial intelligence is that every week it seems like they're saying, well, this was the most remarkable week we've ever had, and that happens every week. So generally when you do these updates, you put them together and then within a few days, you find that you're already outdated in terms of what is going on. Okay. There's been a lot of talk about how artificial image generation is a kind of theft, and we'll talk about that. I think that is somewhat harsh. It's not really true, but nonetheless, many artists are upset about that. And over the past year, they've actually been filing lawsuits about copyright infringement, especially Getty Images, as I recall. Has one uh, in the pipeline against OpenAI and some other vendors because they train them off those systems. Okay, there are more than 40 generative image systems these days. I'm going to look at just 7, the ones I listed here, from OpenAI and Adobe and Midjourney, Google, just a couple others. And I'll also talk about some of the new offerings from Apple in terms of Siri image search, image playground, and the photos cleanup. By the way, of those 40 systems, a lot of them are basically piggybacked on the big 7. Uh, they add things such as a little help with prompt engineering and so forth, but I think these 7 represent the core of the industry. And I'll also be looking at video generation, which is getting very exciting. I'll look at Sora from OpenAI, uh, Runway Generation 2, and Synthesia, which is a very interesting service out of Germany. So, what do these systems really do? Well, they're trained by memorizing and categorizing numerous images, analyzing their parts and giving a matrix of weights for them. Then it has a variety of techniques that I'll go over that produce an image that will match the intent, the prompt that you give it. Now, it's sort of similar to training a human artist, because don't human artists look at a lot of images and drawings and so forth, and they learn the techniques of illustration to reproduce that when they're given an assignment for a given type of image. However, it is true that large language models can be reduced to basically a fine match, copy, paste. They don't have any conscious creativity, and that becomes quite evident when you work with them. Just a quick look. This is the different types of artificial intelligent models that are used, techniques that are used. And I've listed these from in the order of their sophistication, how far along they are in development. And of course, transformers were the first, so they're at the top, and then the diffusion models after that. You may have heard of the generative adversarial networks. That's where you put 2 artificial intelligence systems together. One creates the image, the other analyzes it and says whether it's good or not. And just go back and forth until they get a final product that's acceptable. And then you can do things like combine a transformer with the adversarial systems and so forth. And just to note the primary uses, You can see that the diffusion models do image construction. The transformers plus the adversarial networks do text to image and video generation. Uh, there's some others that are involved in image generation too, but the ones there at the top, they are the main ones. And in particular, in the group that I'm looking at, we have the transformers plus the adversarial networks that is used by Google Gemini, Imagen, by Adobe Firefly, and the OpenAI GPT 4.0. Diffusion models are used by Stable Diffusion and the OpenAI DALL-E. You actually have two different ways in OpenAI to make images. One uses the transformer GPT 4.0. The other, DALL-E, uses a diffusion model, which makes for an interesting comparison. And then we have the transformer diffusion models that is used by Flux Art Pro and likely by Midjourney. But I put the question mark on Midjourney because Midjourney doesn't actually reveal what they use. Now, beyond the large language models, you have things like the O1 and O3 models from OpenAI and the Gemini from Google. These go quite beyond LLMs because they have inference and validation and multimodal processes. And they are moving to what is called a large conceptual model, where they will not be looking at text, but they will actually be coding things in general concepts. Uh, both of these methods are being kept private for now. They should become artificial general intelligence and maybe artificial superior intelligence, or if not already. Some say it's already happened. Chinese researchers, they've studied these models, they've done some analysis, and they say they will publish an open source version of the code. Now, a year ago, when I did this presentation, the images I showed were impressive but flawed. Particularly, I noted that the hands were very badly drawn. And that's kind of interesting because it happens that drawing a hand is something that's difficult for a human artist. To make it look good and realistic. Usually you get problems with it looking like a bunch of bananas or something. Um, I'm going to use a simple prompt. It's a similar to one I've done before. A scientist writing equations on a whiteboard. Then after that, I have a couple very complicated prompts that we'll take a look at. I'm going to start with Apple AI. I should note that at Apple, they use the acronym AI to mean Apple Intelligence, just sort of a branding thing for them. But we'll see what they have. Okay. Apple Siri will search for images and provide a selection with source links. And Apple is respectful of interpretation. The links do show where the image came from. Apple Image Playground will modify a reference image, usually from your photos library, and provide illustration style graphics. And then finally, Apple Photos has a new tool for cleaning unwanted elements from photos. There's also a new tool that's available on iPad and iPhone where you can write a text document, say, for example, in Pages, and then use a new tool to provide an appropriate image to go along with the text. You just do a little circle on the text and it will generate the image. I'm not going to show that tonight because I do not have enough experience with it yet, but that is available as well. So here's what we get when we use Siri to generate images. It will search for images that match the request. It's not going to generate images at all. It is going to instead pull them out of open uh, uh, repositories such as the stock images and so forth. Gives you a little thumbnail of what it found, and then you can click on the thumbnail to be taken to the original source. For the image playground, by default, it uses the image that I my own image from my own photos. I could have chosen another reference, but with it, I can give it a prompt that says, do something with it. And of course, my prompt was scientist drawing on a whiteboard. So using my face, this is what it came up with. And of course, the equations are gibberish and the symbols are nothing, they're not recognizable. However, I was pleased that the hand at least looked fairly good. Uh, you know, it's kind of odd because I see the hand holding what looks like black chalk, but then that matches the whiteboard behind it with the black writing. It's just strange because I've never seen that in real life. Um, you know, black pens, yes, chalk, no. Uh, but anyway, I've shown this to people, they say, oh yeah, that does look like you. Well, okay, fine. Now here's the Apple Photos cleanup. In Apple Photos, when you edit a photo, you'll see that there's a new option at the top next to the adjust, filter, and crop options. You have one that's cleanup. If you click on cleanup, it will bring up a little wand that you can paint over part of the image. When you paint over the image, give it a few seconds, it will produce a cleanup version. So compare the left to the right, and you can see it has removed the person from the image because I basically painted him out. And it's given us a very credible looking filled in image. The foliage and the water and so forth all look completely natural. You so it's very effective that way. Um, Adobe Photoshop has also a new remove tool that was just recently introduced. And here's the result it gives. And again, you can see it's done a very credible job, giving us a nice scene that, you cannot tell that there had been a person there at all. But let's compare the two results. Okay, I put little circles around the areas that are very interesting in the replacement. You can see that the Adobe tool took quite a different direction from the Apple tool. The Adobe tool seems to have scanned vertically down from the top to the bottom because it looked at those branches and it filled in the area with branches. Whereas it seems like the Apple tool was going horizontally because it filled in that area with a bush that it would have encountered horizontally. Also, you notice little details that Adobe put in a couple supports on the railing, and Photoshop did not, which is kind of interesting. But in both cases, it really did a nice job, even though it came up with quite different images. Another new tool in Photoshop was the select subject and then generatively fill. And actually, I've shown this one before. You've seen this before, but you can select your subject. It will do it for you. You can adjust your selection to fine tune it, and then invert it and choose generative fill. Describe the scene you want to fill in around it. And when you do that, because look at this scene here. I'm sitting there in that chair in this little cafe. I can turn that into that same chair sitting off in the woods somewhere. And you'll notice that it's done a good job of understanding what the lighting was like, reproducing that in the forest scene. And it's interesting that it has a little bit of foliage wrapping around the sides of the chair. It's very interesting that it decided to do that. So it's a very credible job, and you know, it's a very useful thing to be able to do. Okay, let's look at Adobe Firefly. This will be the standalone image generator. And again, the prompt I'm using for this is scientist writing equations on a whiteboard. Okay, here we are. Now, I mentioned in my little note here that it has more diversity than the other models I'm going to show. By that, I mean that I have an elderly gentleman, I have an Asian female, a couple different guys. Uh, the other tools that I'll be showing, they tend to have kind of a sameness to all the people they put into the generated image. But this is not bad, okay? The pins are not being held quite correctly, it really looks awkward. But other than that, the photorealism is pretty good uh, in terms of the generation. Here's a close-up of one, and aside from that hand, it is actually very good. And if you could fix up the hand, you would have something pretty good here, I think. Now let's look at OpenAI, and I'll start by using the GPT 4.0 model. It's a very nice generation. You could use this as an illustration for a lot of purposes. And the equations are still pretty much nonsense, but the symbols are all recognizable. It all looks like it should make sense, although it doesn't really. Uh, the holding of the pen is very good. That looks exactly the way it should look. But the question is, who would use a pen on a chalkboard? Well, again, understand these models, these generation systems don't really have a conceptual understanding, you know. Uh, so it decided to show him holding a pen, and in fact, a black pen on a chalkboard that has white chalk symbols. Here's another variation. It kind of stuck to the same elements. It just gave me a slightly different person, that's all. Um, Now, this next one is the DALL-E image generator for OpenAI. Difference is the previous one was using a transformer. This one uses a diffusion method. And now you see it has given me a clear board. And what's interesting about this clear board is that it's quite magical. It's floating in space with no supports. Um, and again, that's because the generation system has no idea that things like that need to have support. Um, Other than that, it's a pretty nice image. If you kind of look at the table, you'll notice that what looks like it was an inked symbol on the board seems to have fallen off and fallen down onto the table, which again is something that you're not going to see in real life. But other than that, I'm kind of pleased by it. The shadows make sense. The reflections make sense. It's not bad at all. Hand is a little wonky. Now here's Midjourney. As I mentioned, I'm pretty sure that Midjourney uses a combination of a transformer and diffusion, but Midjourney, the company, doesn't tell what its mechanism really is. So it gave me a selection of four, and gee, I don't know. You see, there's a sameness to them all. I made a joke that it looks like they called up central casting and they sent over four actors, and this is what they sent if someone asked for a scientist. All bearded and all wearing glasses and so on, lab coats and all that. Um, and that second one there, I mean, he is really kind of awkwardly handling that pencil. And why would you use a pencil on a board anyway? Okay. This is one of the nicer ones of the group. Um, I want you to notice that it has simulated a narrow depth of field, which is very photographic. And the hands, of course, look quite good. That's really a good rendition of the hands. Now I'll move on to Google Gemini, which is a late entry in the group. Gemini really took off this past year. Here's their latest generator, the Imagen 3. You can mistake this for a photo, don't you think? I see good reflections and shadows. I see a good simulation of the depth of field. Um, The little finger on the hand is a little bit off-sized, but I experimented. I took a pen and I experimented with holding it. And I found that, yeah, if I held it in just this way, that's what the hand would look like. So it seems to have done a decent job. Here's another variation from the same system. Um, and it's not bad. He's using the right color pen on the whiteboard. Uh, Seems to be holding it quite well. Uh, this could very easily be mistaken as a real life scene. Our next one is Stable Diffusion. And here we go. It's pretty good. You still have some pen holding problems, but not too bad. Flux Art Pro. Now, there's something very interesting about Flux Art Pro. I didn't mention it before, but in the other systems, uh, whether it be the OpenAI or the Google Gemini, Stable Diffusion, and so on, they sort of censor what you can do. They will not do real people. They will not do R X-rated images and so forth. Flux Art Pro allows you to decide whether you want to have that censorship or not. So you can see under safety, it provides safe, mild, mature, and explicit. Okay. However, they kind of messed up. You notice the hand has 6 fingers again, just like the ones from last year. But if you can ignore what the messed up hand, I will say again, this is producing a nice photographic rendition of my prompt. Of course, the equations are still nonsense, but the systems have no idea what equations really are. Okay, now let's have some fun. We will go on with the complex prompt and see what we can do with that. Okay, now my goal here is to see how accurate it will be in interpretation and creation. So my real life scenario is a diverse group of people, elaborate ballroom, elegantly dressed. I asked if the walls have historical designs, and I want the center of attention to be a person dressed as a diplomat. And I told them to use photograph quality. By the way, you'll notice that I say use photograph quality rather than photographic. A lot of these systems, if you tell them photographic, uh, they will not give you an actual photo. That is to say, they will not simulate an actual photo. They'll get close. But if you say photograph, uh, that tends to emphasize the desire to have something that it does look like a photograph. My fantasy scenario is a beautiful woman in pink in a Northern California forest. We'll use sunlight rays and illumination, long hair and a breeze, high heels and a unicorn. So we'll see if he gets all of those elements, because that's part of my goal here to see how close it can get to the interpretation of the prompt. Okay, here's Firefly. Well, this is dreadful. Just a very bad rendition. The faces are just nightmarish, and it got some of the other elements correct, but you know, just really came out poorly. And that's odd because it did the scientist, as you recall, fairly well. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe when you give it fewer restraints and it has more latitude, that it does better. And perhaps asking it to do a crowd of people is just a little too much. It's able to do single people fine, but handling a crowd, nope. And here's the one of the fantasy picture. And it's also bad. I mean, the hand is incorrect. It's missing a leg, missing an arm. Um, you know, that's not exactly a unicorn there. So it just didn't work out at all. Now remember that in filling in backgrounds, it did fine. And the forest, it does look good. Uh, but apparently, in this case, trying to match my prompt, it couldn't do that. Midjourney. Okay, there were 4 tries, and I gave this is the best one of the group, but they were all reasonable. Okay, it's not photograph quality. And also you notice that it defaulted to a 19th century scene. Uh, Now that's perfectly fine. It just kind of surprised me. I kind of wondered why it did that. Um, but for some illustration purposes, this could be a decent image. The fantasy image is much better. Uh, the others did have flaws, so I had to choose the one that had the least number of flaws. You might argue that I gave it the benefit of the doubt and figured that one of the legs was kind of hidden by the other leg and the dress and all that, but still, it is not a bad image. Stable diffusion. Again, it's kind of a mess. The faces are not good, and let me see if I can point it out to you. If you look at this guy here, left of center, I have no idea what that's supposed to be. It just kind of looks like he turned his head into an oblong or gave him a crazy hat or something. So, not really acceptable. The fantasy image is quite good. The hand is a little awkward, but if you look around this image, it looks like all the elements are there. Forest, the sunlight rays, the unicorn, the girl in pink, so forth. Let's take a look at that hand. Okay, I kind of decided that the hand could perhaps be okay. I figure that maybe the thumb is hiding behind the sleeve, and it does have just the normal number of fingers. So, all right. Still, though, a little bit awkward looking. Here is Flux Art Pro. Now, this one surprised me because I looked at it and thought, well, this is like Disney animation art. It looks like just like it's a still from a animated movie. Also, there are plenty of mistakes. The man in the brown vest on the right has 6 fingers. The lady in blue over the left, same. If you look at the guy in the back, he actually kind of has a doubled hand somehow. So lots of errors there. But it's interesting. It seems to give me an illustration style that makes me think of a Disney animation. Okay, this is the fantasy scene from Flux Art Pro, and it's actually very good. Uh, Everything is there that it was asked for, in terms of the forest, the sunlight, the unicorn, the girl in pink, and all that, and the high hills. So I can't really argue with it. Now let's go to OpenAI GPT 4.0, and this is one of my transformer style images. Like uh, the ones earlier, it seems to have defaulted to a 19th century scene. There are some weird faces in there, that are not acceptable. And also, it's kind of interesting. I specified the diplomat was center of attention, but this poor guy, he's just standing there, and you can see that he's thinking that everyone's ignoring him. He could be alone in the room, you know. So not quite the interpretation I had asked for. And here's its version of the fantasy scene. And, this one is pretty much a drawing. No one would look at this and say it's photograph quality. It is very definitely a drawing or a painting. Also, look at the horse. It's not a unicorn, and one of the rear legs has been moved up to the front. So he has three legs in front and one leg in the rear, um, which is very strange. Okay, this is another attempt with it, and it's somewhat better. Uh, I have no idea why between different attempts it can get things changed. Still very much a illustration quality type of image, uh, but not bad. Now we go to DALL-E, and recall that the difference between the 4.0 and the DALL-E is that in GPT 4.0, it is using a transformer. In DALL-E, it is using a diffusion method. And I put a number of circles on this image just to point out where the people were very badly done. Even when, they're done in such miniature sizes, you can see that there was very bad distortions. Uh, so there's some problems there. And again, remember it did single people fairly well. So I think it's just a question that you give it a crowd and it simply can't handle it. Okay. I kind of get the feeling these systems all trained off the same set of images because it always seems to be the same girl in the same kind of pink dress. Um, but this is very good. This is a nice image, could serve a lot of purposes. Uh, it's something that the unicorn has become a Clydesdale unicorn, uh, but uh, it's not a bad image at all. Here's another variation. Still a very good image. The hand is nice. Everything else is present that we asked for in our prompt. Oh, and one more from DALL-E. Again, that really seems to have focused on this uh, one type of horse and one type of girl. By the way, I will put a PDF of this presentation for download on our website. So if you'd like to get that and go through and look at these images yourself with better resolution, you can. Okay, now here is Google Gemini Imagen 3. This looks like a real photograph. It's the first one that did. Plus, it's in a modern setting. Uh, so I imagine that it sorted through a lot of real life photos to come up with the bits and pieces that it assembled to make this. Uh, it's very amusing because I really think that looks like Wolf Blitzer there in the back. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, if that's what it looks like. Also, I want you to notice the guy on the right with the strap over his shoulder. Uh, that's like a 1960s, 1970s style camera strap. So, uh, so it kind of gives it that feel that he's like a correspondent photographer. Um, by the way, if any of you recognize any of these people, let me know. I kind of spotted what I think is Wolf Blitzer. The others, just seem to be anonymous. Uh, and I did search, by the way, to see if I could find any news photograph that matched this one. I couldn't find one. So it does seem to be a generation, from bits and pieces of other photos. Uh, and whether or not it's using real people, I don't know. Here's a couple other tries. The one on the left is not photographic, it's more of an illustration, but it's reasonably nice. Some of the features, some of the foreheads look a little stern and so forth, but not too bad. The one on the right is much more photographic, uh, looks very good, so I'm fairly impressed by that. And here's one more. Again, this one came out very photographic. Uh, I like the fact that this time it chose to show a diplomat in a national costume of some sort. Uh, and everyone looks natural and everyone looks good. Now, this was Imagen 3. Imagen had a previous version, Imagen 2. Thought I'd take a quick look at that just to see if it does similar work. Oh, wait, I forgot I had to go through the fantasy scene next. And here's the fantasy scene. Not too bad. Not exactly photo quality, but not too bad. Same goes here, a little bit of an improvement, but it's not bad at all. Okay, here's the Imagen 2. Okay, this is actually very impressive. Uh, from the clothes that everyone is wearing, I kind of peg this as being between the World War I and World War II sometime, and everything seems to be appropriate for that period. I like the fact of the guy in the far back. I can kind of imagine that he's the guy that planned this reception, and he seems to be very pleased with how it's going. Um, but it looks like a very realistic scene. Natural people, natural setting. Uh, Everything's nice. And for the fantasy scene, this is actually one of the best. It does look photographic now. Um, and all the elements are there. I like the fact that it has put the unicorn out of focus, as a real camera would if they're using a open F. Um, so it's a pretty good image. Now, here I said, let's make a photo quality image showing an art student who is clipping art and pasting it together, make a new image. That's because that's basically what these systems tend to do. And here it is from Imagen 3. And going back to my idea that maybe when you do single people, it does much better than when I'm doing crowds. This is a really good photo image, and it's showing precisely what I asked for. The art student has magazines out. She's cut out little bits and pieces, and now she's trying to assemble the bits and pieces into a new image. For fun, I gave it a different prompt. I said, create a photographic image that's a human metaphor for the process by which Google Gemini Imagen 3 creates an image. So basically, I asked it to, okay, however you create images, show me what a human would look like if they were using your process. Now, again, these systems have no conceptual understanding. So, chances are all it did was simply say, okay, human creates image. And that's what it gave me. But it is kind of interesting because you can see that the artist here has reference images up on her artboard all around her work area as she is constructing this image. The shadow is outstanding, got that perfectly. Uh, it's really a good quality generation. So here's my assessment. First off, OpenAI and Google are very close, and they both give you excellent results, especially when you don't make it too complicated. Don't ask for crowds of people and so forth. Um, Firefly works best with simple prompts, same way, just fewer restraints on image generation. And of course, as we had seen, that its real strength is filling in backgrounds. That's where it does the best work. Midjourney also decent, but you're gonna have to do a few trials. You're not going to get a good result the first time out. You got to experiment, and after your fourth time or so, you'll get a decent image. Stable diffusion, but it does bad hands. Uh, Flux Art Pro, Flux Pro Art produced the best girl in forest with photorealism, but remember it messed up the hand of that scientist, so it does have a problem there. So Adobe Firefly is included in my Creative Cloud subscription, and it's part of the Photoshop tool. So naturally, I'll use it. And like I say, that if I'm extending or replacing backgrounds, it's great. I just don't use it for making single images out of nothing. It's something where you start with your own image and then you use it to modify your own image. So if I'm not going to be using Photoshop, then I'm going to choose OpenAI or Google Gemini. And I think it's fair to say that at the moment, Google Gemini Imagen 3 uh, edges out the others. Of course, with this kind of competition between these companies, that will probably go back and forth between them over the next year or so. And Flux Pro Art, is also quite good, and it does allow the uncensored image creation. Now let's move on to video generation. As I said, we're going to try OpenAI Sora, Runway Gen 2, and Synthesia. Also, when I was putting this presentation together, uh, Google told me about their new VEO2, replacing their previous VEO. And I'm on the waiting list to get to use that. They haven't made it public yet. But I have seen some results from early access reviewers, and they say it's outstanding. So I'm going to be very anxious to see what can be done with it. So let's start with OpenAI Sora. So the prompt is a beautiful woman is walking in a corridor beside server racks. She's checking the status lights on each server. I want it photorealistic. Now, when I give it that prompt, Sora returned to me a storyboard, basically a set of still images that I could choose from and edit and whatever. And when I'm ready, then I click the generate button. It produced two versions of the video, and I picked one out. So this next one is that version. Okay, I'm going to let it run through a couple times for you before I talk about it. Okay. Well, take a look at the hand. It is morphing frame to frame. So that's clearly a problem. Uh, and it's an interesting error for it to make. It shows that it's trying to generate the next frame based on the previous frame and doesn't really have good continuity. Okay, Runway Gen 2 does my second video. Gave it the same prompt as before, but I gave it some additional parameters. I asked for a full 10 seconds in 4:3 aspect ratio, and they had three different models, A1, A2, and A3, and I chose to use their A3 model, which they say is their most advanced. So let's see what we get. Okay, gonna freeze for a moment. Looking at the figure, the girl, I mean, that doesn't look good at all. Her face is just wrong, and uh, everything is kind of uh, uh, cartoonish looking, uh, kind of skewed, and so forth. But as I play it, what you're going to see is that as it goes uh, through the frames, it improves. Uh, so let's try that. Okay, did you notice it just really improved? It's still pretty much an animation, not a realistic looking image. but it got better. Let's see if I can run that again. She ends up looking fairly natural, not with enough details to say that it's photographic, but not bad. Now, the third one uses my personal avatar in the Synthesia service. I created that by making a sample video of me speaking a 5-minute monologue. And for doing these monologues, you can choose any content you want. In this case, I just read a short commentary on quantum mechanics. From that sample, they create a avatar that will have its movements, its lip syncing, and its voice all synthesized for any text we want in many different languages. So let me show you this one. I'm going to let it play briefly, just so you can watch the how well it syncs, and hopefully you'll hear the sound here. Uh, Linda, if you don't hear the sound, let me know. Just raise your hand or something. The Silicon Valley Macintosh user group, known by its acronym SVMUG, is one of the oldest Apple-related user groups. The group focuses not only on Apple products, including the desktop, laptop, iPhone, iPad, and watch devices, but also on any technology that interests its members. It holds monthly online meetings featuring guest presenters, often well-known technology pundits and podcasters. Membership is free and open to anyone, as our meetings are online. Okay. So you can see that's really pretty good. It has good lip syncing, movements. Um, and the beauty of it is I could have a script where I'm saying anything for any length, uh, and I can choose to do it in different languages, and that's quite remarkable. They do other things as well. It doesn't have to be a monologue. You can have two avatars and you can have them do a dialogue with each other. And they can have pre-built scenes. You can make your own scene. And if you give it PowerPoint slides, it will convert the slides into scenes. Now, there is censorship. They're very touchy about that. You cannot have scripts containing offensive commentary, misinformation, opinions, even relatively benign ones. And I know that because I tried making one where I gave a software review and they considered that to be an opinion and they didn't want to have that out there. The company is based in Germany and they might be very wary of having their company embroiled in some sort of defamation suit or whatever. So they do watch out for that. Um, Their target usage is for people to make things like training videos, information videos of some kind. Uh, and when you go to their website, you'll see many examples of that. Okay, going through all that, the next question might be, well, if you're a traditional photographer, how are you going to work in an AI imaging environment? I mean, is your job dead or, are there things you can do? So I thought it'd be cute if I asked GPT 4.0 for some suggestions of how a photographer could work. So let's take a look at that. Well, rather obviously it says figure out a way to use AI. And of course, it can be used for retouching and color grading and compositing. We saw that with the Photoshop examples. They also suggested you might do hybrids, that in the same way that Apple Image Playground takes an image from my photos and will change it according to a prompt. You could do that with AI generated elements. Um, Also, you can use it to automate tasks. Now, that is not so much image generation, but uh, all the companies have introduced the idea of having AI agents that you script and have these scripts handle some regular tasks for you. For example, there's one where a guy says, okay, go out each day and give me the latest news stories on artificial intelligence and create a summary for me. You can do things like that. So presumably I could create an agent that I could say, okay, uh, check this particular folder on my computer and go in there and uh, do some red eye corrections and blemish corrections and so forth, uh, all without me having to be involved. And there could be new services. Uh, you could do traditional portrait photography, but say that, okay, I'll put you in a forest with a unicorn. How about that? Um, and you could also make art pieces, that a client would say, well, I like a nice little, almost photographic piece that shows these things. And you would do it custom for him. Um, and you can also recolor and fix damaged photos. There are several systems out there that you can get now that do a good job of that. You could ask AI to help with promoting your content, doing ads and mock-ups, and make AI assisted social media campaigns. Educational services, you know, if you're can't find the gold yourself, well, you can sell the shovels for finding the gold. And usually selling the shovels is more profitable than trying to find the gold. So you can do that too. Uh, this is just basic advice here about partnering with brands, uh, using AI to create illustrations for digital storytelling and so forth. I'm not big on NFT art, because it makes me nervous when people are paying money just for the speculative value of something. All right. Most of the systems will put a little watermark into the image to let people know that this has some AI generation. And there's currently a movement underway to come up with some sort of industry standard for invisible embedding of watermarks and other methods for designating AI. Um, then also we have the problem that you want to make sure that you're not infringing on somebody's copyright. As you know, OpenAI is getting sued about that. Um, Adobe is not, because Adobe made a big point of using only its own stock photos that it already had permission to use. Even so, a lot of the stock photo contributors are kind of upset about it, but in that case, Adobe is standing on reasonably good legal grounds. And of course, as I showed earlier, uh, Apple does not create images with its tool. It will search for images for you, or it will use Playground to modify your image, but it does not try to copy paste from other images out there. Okay, nothing too interested here, but yeah, sure, there are some AI creative communities that you can work with. Um, and of course, show your portfolio to uh, uh, let people see what you have done. And definitely tell people that you are a traditional photographer, that you're using AI with your traditional work, and that you're not just somebody that with no talent who is just generating stuff out of nothing. Okay, why don't we go to a group discussion if you like? So I'm going to stop sharing, and if anyone wants to say anything, you can unmute and talk or throw something into chat. So, any comments?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I just think this was a very impressive masterclass in a whole new uh, uh, realm of communication, which we know almost nothing about. It is memorable, and I just can't tell you how impressed we are.
Well, okay. I don't know. I will put a PDF onto the website that people can download, and of course, we'll have the video of the presentation on the SV Mug YouTube channel.
Mhm.
Okay, other comments?
I have a question, Robert.
Okay.
For your avatar part where you had the generated video of you speaking, was the voice you actually dictating, or was it a generated voice?
It's a generated voice. It analyzed my original speech and came up with the appropriate uh, pronunciations and, you know, so forth, accent and all that, so that it could generate my voice reading any text.
Did you have to give it a specific kind of word uh, or dialogue in order for it to do this, or what are the
Well, it's
requirements?
my choice. I gave it 5 minutes of me reading from quantum mechanics, and that's what it used.
Yeah, it was pretty convincing. I mean, it's much
So,
closer than we've seen before of an avatar
mhm.
of you. Yeah.
But what's disturbing is that while this company is being very careful about how their system is used, uh, anyone with similar technology could take 5 minutes of someone from real life and get all the information they need to create a avatar of them saying anything they want.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're going to have to watch out for that in the future.
Mm,
Very dangerous, very dangerous.
mm, mm.
Okay, other comments, or shall we move on?
Well, I was just going to make one more comment. There was in one of the series of the four scientists, you know, when you had the four scientists drawing, um, one guy looked like he had an arm missing to me. And I was going to come in the middle of that, and then I just didn't catch it, and you went on. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Might be worth a look. See, it might have been, you know, folded in a funny way or something, but mention that. And
So I took another look, and Linda is correct. There is a missing arm.
mention that. And one question, are you like how are you buying the software for all of these different companies and then doing the comparison?
Ah, okay. Um, I have a subscription with OpenAI, but I have that covers all their products, the chat and the DALL-E and the GPT 4.0 and so forth. Um, and I have a Google Workspace that I use for other things, but because I have Google Workspace, I also get Gemini.
Okay.
Okay. As for the others, you know, they have good free tiers available so
Okay.
that people can experiment with it, and that's generally what I do.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thanks.
Oh, and I have a subscription to Adobe Creative Cloud, so that's why I have Firefly.
Adobe.
Mhm.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and terminate here and turn it back over to Linda.